All right, I'm gonna do my little intro video that I did here.
Let's go. Let's get it.
Boom. See it? It
Let's
says
go.
show.
Let's get it. Let's go. Let's get it. Let's go. Let's get it. Let's go. Let's get it. Let's go.
Uh,
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Fran and Friends on Saturday. And today I have a special guest with me. And when I say special, I really mean special in a way that is influence, that is change, that is everything that we would find in to me, I consider superwoman. So, Miss Khadijah Shabazz, she is, I could say maybe my SC sister now. I haven't graduated yet, but I'm about to be.
yeah.
And she's the author of a book called I Didn't Sign Up for This. And in her story, she shares about just various spaces that she's been, the triumphs, the areas where we could use some pause and review. And gosh, I'm telling you, I got the book, and within 3 to 5 days, I was even losing sleep just to finish this book of how much it drew
Wow.
me inside of it. So, backstage, I was talking with Miss Khadijah, and Miss Khadijah can share with you a little bit about her background. There's a part in her book where Miss Khadijah talks about her having her child and her husband at the time. And I believe you were a teenage mom. Is that correct, Miss Khadijah?
Yeah, so was
Yes. And
yes.
so at that time, I guess they had food stamps and they ran out of food stamps and they went to Miss Khadijah's home to ask her mom, to help. And so the whole picture was mom had taken the baby from them, cleaned up the baby, washed baby's clothes, and then mom was cooking. And then Miss Khadijah came in, making a plate for herself and her man, her husband. And then her mom was like, put that down. And Miss Khadijah, you got to finish this story because the way that it ended, oh my God, I would not have responded as patiently as you did or as poignant or posed as you did. So please share with people a little bit about yourself. And if you want to answer that question first, please feel free to do so.
Yes. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you, Fran, for having me. So the part in the book that she's talking about, I am a product of the 50s and things were done quite differently back then, and teenage pregnancies and things like that, they went unheard of. Most teenage pregnancies, you ended up down south at somebody's auntie, grandma's house, and you came back with a little nephew or niece other than your own. But my family didn't have anybody to send me to per se. So I did get married really young and really early, and I got married to a young man who wasn't working. He was still living with his mom. The story's not too much unlike most young people, back then even or now. But yeah, we ran out of food stamps or whatever. And my family didn't grow up on food stamps. That was something that was taboo. That was something that if you did have them, you didn't share that. That was like something to be ashamed of to have them in the first place. So I came to my mom's house because we had no food, and my mom, she met us at the door. You don't have any food? No, we don't have any food. And she took my son, who was about maybe 8 months old at the time, and she washed him and washed the clothes, and she started cooking. It was a time before microwave, so she actually started preparing food. And when the food was done, she got my son, and she set him on the lap, and he was still little, so he's only eating what a 8-month-old baby would eat. She's like feeding him and talking to him, and I'm like, oh, and I'm enjoying my mom, and my husband is sitting there, and as I started to fix plates for myself and my young husband, my mom really just nonchalantly asked me, what are you doing? So I'm fixing food. I don't even remember what the food was. She said, why are you fixing food? Well, the laundry and things will be ready in a minute, so we'll just eat now, take a plate. And while she's feeding my son, she's looking down at my son and she says, put the food down. I said, put the food down. She said, I cooked this for my grandson. And I'm like, yeah, it looks good. She's no, put the food down. She says, you are married with a husband. You eat what your husband can provide for you. And when your husband can't provide for you, then you need to do what you need to do. I fixed this food for my grandson. And well, he can't eat all of this. And I'm still thinking that she's joking, and she's really not joking. She said, put the food down. And I did. And she continued to feed my son. And when she finished feeding him, she handed him back to me and and then she proceeded to put the food away. Nobody else was there. My other sisters and weren't there at the time, but she went to put the food away, and she said, "You have a husband. He's supposed to provide for you, not me. If he cannot provide for you, that's something you need to try to work out." Some in language like that. I was so mad, I was so hurt, I was didn't understand what she was doing. I just felt she was the meanest. "How can you be so mean to me? How can you be so cruel?" And to me, what did I do? And this is the feeling that I had that last another 20, 30 years, and me not understanding the lesson that she was teaching me at that time. But one of the things that absolutely never happened again with me is that I never depended on another man, whoever he was, to provide food for me where that I couldn't give for myself. I never had another man that could not at least buy me a plate of food. And that's where I was, 'cause but what do? We end up going back over to my husband's mama's house where
Mhm.
we fed, and I couldn't understand. I did not understand that lesson. That was an absolute lesson, but it took me 20, 30 years to really process what happened at that particular time.
Oh gosh,
Share that
this could be.
story.
I was telling you backstage, like all those feelings you just explained, those are definitely resonating with how I would have felt. Like, hold up, you already see me struggling. You see the space, but for you to take away, like, okay, I'm going to now use this as my resource box. Note to self: never ever date anybody broke again, because you don't want to be in this situation again. But that is what life does, right? It provides us with lessons.
It
And
provides with lessons, and she also understand like I said, I was six we were talking earlier, I grew up in a middle class type of in a Black community in Cleveland, where, Black people were like the first. We had, like, the first Black mayor, the first this, the first that, and to be on food stamps or needing things in the community that I was in, we didn't know, I didn't grow up like that, not that there was anything wrong with it, but she was so embarrassed of the fact that I even had some. I wasn't allowed to bring the food that food stamps bought into the house. Like people talk about government cheese and things like that back in the day, that I wasn't allowed to bring that in. It was before
mm,
WIC. So I had to figure out a way, prior to getting married, that this was like a shameful thing to her when I come in, I can help. I got food stamps now. And the look was, you have what? Don't bring those in here. And it was the hard work. We lived in a house. We lived in a community of Black affluent people coming up. And that's not something that we talked about. If they did have it, it was a secret. It was a shameful thing in certain communities to be waiting on government assistant programs and government money. That was not something that, it's like normal now. Who doesn't? Who wouldn't? Who can't? So all of that, if community did have that, that's not something that you shared. Even in the store, you would pull the food stamps out where people that you knew that was didn't see them. So all of this,
Mhm.
shaped me as to, oh my God, this is like really terrible, and let me get myself together so that I'm not in a position to have to depend on anything like this. So that was side of the backstory too, but I didn't understand that at the time. It took me a while to understand her and her reasoning for doing things.
Mm. Thank you for that, Miss Khadijah. Like when you wrote this book, how did you, I mean, what were you, what was the aim and purpose of it? And then how did you stumble into first trying to write the book? Was it just something that you knew that you would end up writing later on in your lifetime? Or was it maybe some people encouraging you, like, wait, what just happened to you? And so after hearing a statement of, girl, your life should be a book, is that kind of how it opened up?
Yeah, it was a combination of all of that. People had said that to me for years, but I never saw, even like, again, when it's you, it wasn't. It was like, hey, this is just me. This is just what I do. This is just who I am, and I didn't see what they saw in the stories that I would tell. This how you and I are having this conversation now, and a story may come up, and oh, you ought to write a book. Exactly is what people have said to me, but I didn't, but who would read it? Who would even find it interesting besides you and me sitting here talking about it? That was what initially I thought about. But my children, I have biological children, had foster children, had adopted children, and just sitting there listening to them one day, talking about experiences that they had, and they were mixing things up. They were mixing, things up. So my initially, I was going to write the book in order to leave my story with my children, that they could have
Mm,
the correct information, bec- um, because it was all over the place. They're where their dads, where they came from, the children that were adopted. Everybody has a different story that leads to a different story. But when I finally understood the importance of storytelling, I was actually sitting in my SE graduation. So that is
mm,
where I start that. The things that I'm telling you now and some of the things that came up for me, I had suppressed because we're traumatized by a lot of things in our lives. But when you don't recognize the trauma, I never recognized that I was traumatized. I didn't recognize that what happened with my mom was a traumatizing situation. So you put it to the back of your head and you just react and you just do and you keep pushing and you keep doing, but the trauma keeps getting um, beaten down further and further.
right.
It becomes a part of you that you sit there and you're thinking, well, this don't have anything to do with me. All of these people, yeah, you just get up and just keep going and you keep handling it. Well, that was me. And I started having, like if you read the book, I said the tunnel vision, but I'm sitting there in my SE graduation. And we can explain SE for those that don't know what SE is,
Yeah,
but
I was just about to say, we've
yeah,
been doing SE
yeah,
back and
but
forth here, so
yeah, I
could you,
just
yeah,
sat there.
share with the people
And
who what
yeah, I
SE.
was just there in my graduation, and I started having these flashbacks, and I'm like, and it really was like something that was happening on TV that you see. And I'm like, oh, wow, oh, because for my whole 9 weeks, I sat there. I was the one with my arms folded. I was the one who was looking at everybody else like, ooh, what's wrong with her? This and these stories were me. I could relate. But that's when it actually started, the importance of storytelling, how they could help you, how they could help other people, how they could help your family. So
Mhm,
that is what prompted me to get busy and get the book out and the thoughts out. And and the why behind it was because it absolutely started to help other people that could identify with stories that they have that they thought was only interesting to themselves.
Totally. I'm so glad you wrote this book, Miss Khadijah, because I'm I have such a profound respect for the life that you lived. I don't ever want to live your life, Miss Khadijah, because I don't think those are shoes that I could ever fill. But I am so glad that you have walked through it to let us know that we're capable.
We are capable. We
Yeah,
are stronger than we look as women,
yeah.
as Black women. Your stories are valuable. All of us, we have them. That is what I promote now. Outside of Essie, is to tell, even if you look in the mirror and tell it to yourself. The
Mm-hmm.
hardest things to do is look into the mirror and tell the truth to yourself,
Mm-hmm.
good, bad, and ugly to yourself. Whether you never say it out loud to anybody else, but telling the truth to yourself, how you absolutely feel. It is very, very freeing. It's very, very
Totally.
therapeutic. I'm not a therapist, but I just know being able to stand in my truth. For 20 years or more, I lived here in Southern California, and nobody knew my story. Nobody
Mm,
knew that I was the wife of a convicted murderer and bank robber. Nobody knew that, and I couldn't tell anybody that for fear of rejection. Um, some people who didn't know the backstory to it.
mm-hmm.
I couldn't trust anybody to tell my story because, I started being foster mother and caregiver to children that if they know, and then I'm Muslim on top of it, I have to go through that as well. Yeah, so I kept a lot of it in. My family never visited me. They never came to see me. My dad would occasionally, but
Mm,
I'm living, and for somebody who's supposed to be as authentic and truthful as I appear to be, I feel like you don't know me. And I'm sitting there and I'm pretty sure that a lot of people that support someone who has been formerly incarcerated or somebody
mm,
that's incarcerated themselves, and we sit in our discomfort and nobody knows anything, is really, really hard to trust your story with someone. And with a mom who she supported me the way she thought she could or would, I kept that also is a lesson that I learned. You keep your mouth shut. You don't talk about this. You don't talk about that.
mm,
Because then comes the judgment. Here comes um
mm.
the nation and things like.
Wow. So we've been talking a lot about the SE group, and then Carmen, she chimed in. Hey, Carmen, thank you for joining us. Um, so Carmen is also a SE sister. Can you please let the audience know what is this SE we keep throwing around?
Okay, so Acid Justice Group is a group that was founded by Gina Clayton. Now it's Gina Clayton Johnson, and 10 years ago, it's 10. It was 10. Essie turned 10 in May. She formed a group for women who supported someone who was incarcerated or formerly incarcerated or incarcerated themselves, a space where we could come and talk about um, our stories that nobody else really wanted to hear, to be
Mm,
a voice for those who couldn't speak up for themselves. And we have cohorts where we sit and we talk about the trauma, which again, for myself, trauma was like almost a brand new word for me because I'm not traumatized. Is what you guys have been talking about. But she created this space for women to come and feel free to talk about their the supporting of their husbands, their sons, their daughters, or even themselves in this space. Well, my husband had been incarcerated and for over 15 years, and came home, and he passed away. And then that
Mm,
happened again. And then it was other people from the community. It was people in my life that had been murdered by police violence and things like this, and all of these things where nobody felt comfortable talking about because of how we treat each other so harshly when we support. So Essie was a place to come and do this. And after I went through the cohort, which is a 9-week cohort, I started facilitating for Essie because of how it empowered me.
mm,
And so for me to be able to run a cohort where other women can come through and feel empowered by their stories and by their journeys and let them know that they're not alone, that means a lot to me. I'm not an employee of Essie, but my story in my book started in the my Essie graduation. It goes back and forth. The book does, like I'm going back and forth in my story. The book goes the book goes starts at the Essie graduation and leads all the way up to the murder of my son-in-law son by the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department. It's like I said, so bringing women through this cohort became very, very important to me. I did not realize I was traumatized, and I've had been. And it absolutely helped me get through it. So, and in writing that, Gina Clayton became, she wrote my foreword for the book. And with her writing the foreword for the book, it took it to spaces that I probably wouldn't have been able to get the book into those particular spaces. Also, Muta, I don't know if people know Muta, but he was from Tupac's gang group, the Outlaws, and he wrote the other part. So this was like, okay, well, I got 2 different audiences that took this book and thought it was interesting, and it became bestseller on Amazon for almost a year. It became bestseller, and I've been on several speaking engagements from this book. I've been asked to come and speak about the book itself. And when I say I didn't sign up for this, this is what I'm talking about. When I growing up, I didn't sign up to be the wife of a convicted murder or a bank robber. I didn't sign up to be coming in and out of jails and prisons. That was something else that I started to do as well. The book is, like I said, I'm all over the place. I'm so sorry if my story is going all over the place, but I started going
I don't, I
inside the
don't, I
yes.
don't see it going everywhere. I feel like it's
Oh,
going,
okay. That's
yeah.
one of
So,
the things I used to do. I used to go inside the prison, the youth authority here, back in the 90s, and I would go and I would talk to the young men who were incarcerated there, and I would talk to them as if I was their mother, their wife, their girlfriend, or
mm,
whoever. And I would talk, you're in here, and some of you guys are innocent, but some of y'all absolutely did it. So I'm gonna tell you what your mama ain't gonna tell you though today. I'm gonna tell you about what she's going through because of the dumb spit that you decided to get involved in. I'm not talking to those who've been railroaded and in here for things that they didn't, because there are some that are absolutely innocent sitting in there rotten. There were some that, there was a time of when gang banging, when things like that was at, a height. And some of you are absolutely guilty. And I'm going to tell you what you put the women through that, and that is what I would go in and talk to the young men about.
when I read that, Miss Khadijah, I cried throughout most of your story. Like I had to put it down a chapter because, I mean, if people may not know, but my son is incarcerated, and that's how we met was at the SE group, and so just I resonated with so many areas in there, even if it wasn't like it happening in my life. I could see certain principles that applied as well. Oh gosh, that story about your son, Miss Khadijah, opening up with, damn, it was so graphic. It was so graphic. It was so inhumane. It was so heartbreaking to read about how you found your son. And I don't know, did you want to share a little bit about that?
Um, okay? I don't mind sharing some. He was my. You're talking about Dana Malik. He was my son-in-law's son in this book. Dana was married to my daughter, and my daughter was a teenage bride herself, real young. And Dana was in and out of jail, in and out of prison. And my daughter, because they were so young, she did not stay married, but we stayed friends. And we stayed so closely connected that I would take my granddaughter, his child, and his other daughters into prison to visit their father. So they kept a relationship with their father for I think he had 15 years. For the 15 years he was in there, I would take him in and out. So we all had a relationship, and I went from being his mother-in-law to being his mother. On his
Mm,
paperwork, I was his next to Kim, his mother. His mother, he did have one. She passed away at some point. But that's who I was to everybody when I came to the prison, was his mother. So even going behind, sometimes inside, I would go for our little Muslim holidays and things. I was able to see him and spend time with him, and I would go visit him. So, yeah. So it's been 3 years. Um, he was out, he was doing well, adjusting well to being out. He had just got finished painting my other daughter's bedroom. We remained friends. Even my daughter that he was married to, they were friends. I knew his fiance. She's still calls me mom. We're around. That's the type of family that I had. He was here at my house with my daughter that he was married to and her husband and his fiance, and we were just one. That's how we were, one family. Yeah, but I get a call. My daughter, his my granddaughter, his daughter calls me and she goes, "Mom, they're telling me that the police just killed my dad." And I'm like, "What?" And my granddaughter, I'm sorry, had just given birth. It's during COVID. Nobody can get to her. She's having a difficult pregnancy. Her baby has just had a stroke. She has cerebral palsy. We can't get to her. And now you're telling me that somebody did what, And they did. He was allegedly involved in a crime at 3 o'clock in the morning or whatever. Um, and they shot and killed him. And when they killed him, in if this is in Los Angeles. Um, he was against a fence to a school with cars facing the fence, so there's nowhere that he could run. It was like almost being assassinated. He was shot. They shot him, I think it was 6 times, and 1 to the back of the head, like an execution style shooting. They left him on the ground for 14 hours. I tell this story all the time. 14 hours, that's 2 work shifts. 14 hours, I could have flew to New York and back. I could have drove to Arizona and back, and y'all left him on the ground like a piece of trash. You would have picked up a dead animal quicker than you picked up this body. The officer that actually shot and killed him um, was on trial for beating a man, um, 2 months ago, beating a man till you beat the man's eye out. This man that you beat up was somebody that was an innocent. He wasn't even guilty of doing anything. It was a traffic stop. And you beat that man so bad that he left. And LAPD, LA Sheriff's Department still had this man working. So I said all that. What made this so unique was that during COVID, you couldn't go visit, you couldn't go see. We did not know. We didn't know if he was involved in a crime or not, because we didn't have that information. How we found out he was shot in the back of the head was his barber begged the mortuary to let me cut my friend's hair one more time. And they gave in and they let him. And he called us on the phone. He called his daughter and said, "Did you know your dad was shot in the back of the head?" And we like, "No." And the mortuary said, "Well, they told us it was gang violence." It was not gang violence. The sheriff's department did that. That opened up a whole we stopped the funeral, and we went and I lifted my son up, and sure, in the back of his head was a bullet hole. That opened up a whole another can of worms. That just learned me how dirty and how low down the coroner's office and the sheriff's department, all that works together in cahoots. They didn't tell us that. They never told us that. So that's when they start smearing you, bringing up your past, what you did, what you were arrested for, all of that that he may or may not have done. Yeah, you know, your job was as a police officers were to arrest him and bring him where a jury of his peers can say whatever he was or was not doing. You became his executioner at that day. And whatever past he had as far as law enforcement and being incarcerated, at the time you blew his damn brains out, you didn't have any of that information. None. And for him to be up against a fence in a cul-de-sac, there was nowhere for him to run. And what they justified, they said, this is their story, not mine, from 6 feet away. Everybody knows what 6 feet away is after going through COVID. 6 feet away, they're saying that they mistook a black COVID mask for a gun. That's what they said. And that's that story there. So that is how my book ends. There are a couple other stories in this book of law enforcement murdering someone that I was close to that I described in the book. Some of those I had forgotten until I started actually writing the book. So yeah, like I said, trauma that just layers itself and just layers itself. So he was not my biological son, but I have a lot of children that belong to me. They're not biologically mine. So
If they call you mama, Miss Khadijah, that's your baby. Thank you for
okay.
sharing that with us, because I just I just can't imagine getting that kind of news as a mom. Uh, I know how it felt when my son, when I got a call that, you know, he was being taken to jail. These kind of things are devastating. Um, and having to lose someone to the hands of people that are supposed to protect us, um, that's just a whole nother can of worms to creates a
Yeah,
lot of distrust. And it's
a
like,
lot.
okay, so yeah, and it's like there's really no relationship there that can be mended. Um, so what, I guess, what do we do in these kind of situations? Because these things are going on right now. We've talked about the MCJ, which is Men's Central Jail. Us, I say us, not boycotting, but we're down there with our signs saying to close this place because they have standards there that are unsanitary, inhumane, and nobody has really addressed these except groups like Essie. And I just wanted to maybe share a little bit about how Essie helps people to advocate for the community.
So, yeah, coming through that cohort, yes. Afterwards, I never knew how to fight. Everything that I'm saying to you now, it's something that you fight, but you like boxing against the wind. You don't know what to do and how to do it. So individually, we're doing it like that. But when I joined Essie, it gave me almost a blueprint on how to fight back, either using SE as a group or individually, So when I say that in closing, MCJ down, it's some of the statistics that I learned I never knew. I never knew that the United States of America had more people incarcerated than anywhere in the world, in the entire world. I never knew that the majority of them being black, and then coming up next are the brown people. I never knew that Los Angeles County, I think, is third in the country of having locked up people in jail. Jail is not prison. It's a holding tank for people who may be totally innocent, but you're in jail because you don't have any money. We all focus on the bail for our one person, or what we don't think about the other people that are in there. These people are legally innocent in jail. They haven't had their day in court, and it's because of money that they can't get out. So yeah, they remind me of modern day slave catcher. You know, you got them because why? Because that 13th Amendment that says while you are in jail or in prison, you are legally, technically still a slave. And so when you say that out loud, but who are the majority of the people that they have locked up? And when people commit crimes and things on the street and they go to jail or whatever, you're still being held there while they make the determination of whether you've done it or not. And also, when that comes down to the heading of another heading of, I don't have the figures here in front of me. 75% of people that are there have some type of a mental health issue. Whereas if we could get them more mental health services before and or during, they would not have to be down there in a cage. You don't need a cage because but then from there when they're released, then where are they? They're back on the street. So that goes into the
Mhm.
homeless population as well. So all of these things it kind of snatched the bandage off to me as to what was really going on behind the scenes, which the power is in the money. It's like it's a multi-billion-dollar industry to keep us locked up. And I'm not saying people should be unaccountable for whatever they may or may not have done. That's not what I'm saying
Mhm.
to me personally. I don't agree with everything, but I agree with most, and most is if someone could be at home providing for their family. We're not talking about people who murdered or raped or did something heinous. That might be 5% of the people in there. We talking about the other people that are stuck in this antiquated jail system that is older than old. People are dying in there at a rate that I was alarmed at how many black men are in there dying and they're dropping dead from heart attacks age 18 to 40. Who does that on the street? So it's scary to hear how many people when I'm down there and I'm listening to mothers whose children have been murdered inside of MCJ. And whatever the coroner conclusion is, if you have your own independent autopsy, that's not what they're saying. So, it's a scary, horrific thing to be down there. So if we can get that jail closed down, get people the services and things that they need. And again, when oh, lock them up. That's why crime is so bad. I always tell them if we have the worst jail in the entire country and the most incarcerated in anywhere in the entire country, and the United States have the most incarcerated people than anywhere in the entire world, then locking up somebody must not be a deterrent for them if crime still it's still happening. Oh, they're not scared, they're not going to jail. That's the new thing that you're saying. But what about all this people that's locked up in there now? If they were afraid of being locked up or being if this was a deterrent to crime, we wouldn't have the highest rate of crime. So why
Mm.
not try something different? Why not try some humanity or something humane to keep us from being put in a cage where now you have a whole nother traumatized set of people, traumatized family, traumatized people that's what we all living around. We are all living around people who have gone through such horrific things. To even say it out loud and to listen to this is trauma on top of trauma.
Speaking of trying other things, Miss Khadijah, I believe that you had just reached a milestone, and I'd love for you to share with people what that was when you gave your speech a couple of days ago.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I do speak in front of the board of supervisors. 4 years ago, they all agreed to close MCJ and to find alternative and programs for the people that are engaged there. And we gave them a blueprint of how we could get the mentally ill out of there. That would have been first, the mentally ill out of there. And the pre-sentencing, we gave them that, and they have been like not walk. They've been slow walking it. And so it was Tuesday of last week when we were in there again. For me, I told them this is my third year coming to speaking to you guys on the same thing. Here we are again. We're not hearing you. And I'm begging, let's not use that word begging because I sure was not. But I'm saying to you, Um, where's your humanity? We need to shut this down. You agreed to it. And for us, who for myself, who's always with the young people, you need to vote. You need to vote. You telling people that they vote don't mean anything because we voted on it and you did too. And it's taken you this long to act upon what you said you were going to do. Maybe you not holding that seat in the way that we voted for you to have that seat. But the
Mm.
two women that were championing closing it down, Supervisor Holly Mitchell and Horvath, who is in my community, they put it in motion and it passed. So they will start working on that. Um, I think the timeline now is now. They are start working on implementing, getting those mental health patients into. I think we have 5,000 beds to get them out of there, and they have agreed unanimously to start working on what they absolutely promised 4 years ago. So that is what we learned how to
Well,
do.
thank you for advocating.
Oh, thank
Everybody, if
you.
you're out there, clap, 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 claps from Khadijah. Thank you so much for advocating for those that don't have a voice. We are going to wrap up our session here, Ms. Khadijah. So I wanted you to share something that you would like the audience to take away, and then we'll go into our round robin session.
Um, I would like for the audience to take away, if nothing else, is that your story is valuable. Your story is valuable. Tell your story in your community. It does, tell your story to your family. Tell your story to yourself. Um, and it is very, very empowering to be able to do that. You may not write a book like I did, and but for your family, your community, we have so many unsung heroes that are right here among us, and they need to be celebrated. And if it's celebrated through our stories, and then so be it. That's the way they come out. So I can't wait to hear all you guys' stories of triumph and success. Because we're
Mm.
starting one right now. You're frozen. Can't hear you.
Thank you. Miss Khadijah is right. We all come. Can you hear me now?
Okay. I can't hear you.
Hello. Can you hear me
Mm,
now?
yeah, I can.
Oh, what I was trying to say was I feel like Miss Khadijah is a version of Superwoman. We all have our missions here on Earth to fulfill, and I feel like she is doing what she's been called to do. So, for those of you that have watched my podcast, at the end of the session, we have personal questions that we ask. So, I'm going to ask Miss Khadijah 3 questions, and she's going to share with us a little bit more about who she is, as if she didn't already. But here we go. So, the first question is, Miss Khadijah, what's your favorite pastime and why?
Ooh, that's hard. That's a hard question. Um, I'm usually listening to oldies, and I like oldies, and singing. That's like a pastime of me, a habit of mine. And or I don't drive. The other thing I like is riding in a car, looking out of the window with nobody talking. I want to just ride and look out the window with nobody talking to me and listening to my oldies, and I'm good.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Uh, the next question is number 25. The next question is, what were you like as a child?
Shy. I say I was
Shy?
shy. Other people may not. Yeah. Other people may not think I was, but I was shy and I was always ooh, by myself. I was a shy kid, usually by myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Last question is, why are you passionate about what you do? I did not plan this, Miss Khadijah.
Um, I became passionate about what I do because when I sit here and think about how shy and how quiet I was, and how it prevented me from doing things that I really wanted to do earlier in life. And now when I'm like, hey, I can't afford to be still and be quiet anymore. The
Mm,
effect of being still and being quiet is not the outcome that I would have wanted from myself. And now that I'm learning how to exert myself, that's what gives me the passion to do what I do, and to say what I say and let the chips fall where they may. I realize everybody's not going to agree with me. Everybody's not going to like
mhm.
what I say, but that's their business, ain't mine.
Well, Miss Khadijah, it was such a pleasure to have you. If you could let the people know where they can find you and find your book.
That is a picture of me with my hair, the men's central of I'm talking to, if you can see, but the phone up to my head, that's the back of my head. It is, I didn't sign up for this, my redemptive story of memories, mayhem, and murder. You can find that on Amazon. And if you're in the LA area and you have the book itself, I will sign it for you. And if you do have 5 or more people that have read it and want to discuss it, I will come on I, your program or come to you and discuss it. Because it all depends on where you are in the book and what actually interests you. But that's where you can find me.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Miss Khadijah. And it was such a pleasure having you. I appreciate you being open to share your story. I know it's already an open story, but sometimes having to talk these things out again, it's like, ooh. But I appreciate you being a voice of healing for a lot of
Thank you.
us. So,
Thank you.
everybody, thank you again for joining us. Miss Khadijah, if you can hold on for just a second. Have a good Saturday, everyone.